All right, guys, Steve O'Connor back with you here, the Richard Cranium of reality. Here's what I'm doing tonight. I'm going to show you a video here with Gabriella Power, one pretty Aussie chick. Anyway, from Sky News, love Sky News. Of course, we always have a lot of great people from Australia on Sky News. These are some people that obviously have their heads locked on right. Anyway, what we're going to talk about tonight, she's going to go to a few things about this insane liberal nurse that has gone crazy and was actually advocating online about poisoning people. Then, of course, we're going to talk about the morons. There's some commentary from Kimmel and Colbert, basically Dill and Doe, and what these absolute F-tards have to say. And then, of course, I think Kimmel, he's still transitioning into a woman, I believe, but he'll eventually get there. Anyway, the guy's always crying on air. And then we're gonna end off on some stuff from Joe Rogan. So just listen here. We'll get started.
Yesterday on the show, we brought you the charming healthcare worker who took to social media to encourage women to get out there, get on dating apps, all with the intention of hurting ICE officers. Here's part of her seriously deranged rant.
Are the single ladies where these ICE guys are going have a chance to do something, not without risk, but could help the cause for sure? Get on Tinder, get on Hinge, find these guys. They're around. They're an ICE agent, bring some X-Lax and put it in their drinks. Get them sick. Nobody's gonna die. Just enough to incapacitate them, get them off the street for the next day. Highly easily deniable. You could get sick too. Won't eat there again. I'm just saying, let's get them where they eat.
Yeah, and there's so much more. She kept posting and really.
Let's pause there. Is that not unbelievable? And this is that time where you want to take the point to compare conservatives and liberals. You ever notice that it does not matter what happens? Even Charlie Kirk, when he got shot, Trump got shot. No riots, nothing anywhere. Not one conservative advocating violence for the left. Sometimes they're saying, "Hey, man, we may have to get dirty with some of these people." There's that kind of talk. That does happen because you have some people on the left that are insanely violent. They've gone to the point of insanity. These liberals are so out of control that they're now advocating a crime. By the way, it's in California. I won't bore you with the penal code, but it's basically poisoning food or drink. It's a felony, people. You can go to jail for quite some time. Doesn't have to cause permanent harm, believe it or not. If you give somebody a laxative, that's sufficient enough to justify the crime of poisoning someone's food. And you can look it up in the penal code. For anybody who wants to, it's under 347. Anyway, the California penal code. It's going to differ in different states, but it's poisoning people. This lady's advocating that. And that, of course, goes into the next standard of what is going on with somebody who would want to do that. This lady was a nurse. I don't know if has woke and DEI gotten to the point where we're in such problems giving affirmation to the mentally ill of this world. This is the problem we're in now, is because people who are mentally sick want to do harm to others simply because they don't fit their political paradigm. My favorite about all of that is that liberal synonymous with tolerant. And I always tell people, you want to meet the most intolerant person you've ever met in your life? It's real simple. It's a liberal that you don't agree with, or you disagree with their views. The moment you don't agree with their views, you're not only out the door, but they want violence heaped upon you, excuse me. It's amazing to me how deranged these people are. And of course, the more we do this with the people who are the trans testicles and all those things, I've always said this: you kick somebody in the nuts, that'll clear up their gender disorder real quick. They'll figure out that they're not a female once they feel that pain. But it's absolutely retarded to think that we are giving confirmation and affirmation to these people who are mentally ill, instead of saying to them, look, you're not a female, you're not a male, if you believe you're one of the opposite sex that other than your biological birth sex. But you can get counseling for it. You can possibly get medication. You're at a confusing state in your life. Maybe you're just gay and you don't want to accept that. You believe that you're born in the wrong body. It's insanity. It's gone crazy. But last but not least is when you look at what these nurses Nurses, if people don't know, they don't do a Hippocratic oath, but I believe they do what's called a Nightingale pledge. And basically, it's just patient care and ethical practice. What does ethics mean, people? We all know it's doing the right thing for the right reasons, right? Ethical just means being a proper, just, and honest person. Okay? You have a nurse that is out there advocating for other people to commit felonies, to entrap these ICE agents. By the way, she'd be the first one wanting to call a police officer anywhere around to help her with probably domestic violence. That is, if anybody's even dating that troll. I don't know. I wouldn't even let my dog mate with her, but that's a whole other story. But anyway, that girl probably can't get a date anywhere, or possibly she's some sort of bull dyke. I don't know. Bottom line is, this lady is advocating to do harm to people, and then she works in a clinical medical setting. That is insane. It's very dangerous. Let's continue.
Inspiring stuff like that. This woman was working as a nurse and she has now lost her job. Virginia Commonwealth University Health said in a statement to Fox News Digital, following an investigation, the individual involved in the social media video is no longer employed by VCU Health. Now, the hospital and police are investigating.
So, what a shock, right? She lost her job. Go figure. Exactly because of what I just talked about. If this woman hates people that virulently, if she actually wants to do somebody harm simply from their political ideologies, I don't think you want her working in a clinical setting. There have been nurses who have been arrested and charged with murder that have injected things into people's IVs that has killed them. There's been serial killers in that field before. So I don't think you want this woman working in that setting.
The woman over those posts. But what we're still seeing on our screens every day, not just our phone screens, our TV screens, are people on the left screaming Nazi, comparing ICE officers to Nazis. We've heard it from Democrats like Tim Walz, and now left-wing comedians like Stephen Colbert are using it as material for their jokes.
Bavino went on complaining.
Look, Dana, they're trying to portray Border Patrol agents and ICE agents as Gestapo, Nazi, and many other words.
Yes, do not compare ICE or Border Patrol agents to the Nazis. That's an unfair comparison. The Nazis were willing to show their faces.
That guy is such a colossal douchebag. It's unreal. The reason that the ICE agents have to cover their faces because there are all these people out there doing the trolling and the doxing and finding out where these guys live, and they're threatening their lives. They're trying to out them on public media. They believe they're actually evil. I mean, you have to think about the standard that these guys are law enforcement officers that have passed very stringent and strict backgrounds. I've stated that in other videos. And then they're going out there to arrest the worst of the worst offenders in life. And these idiots, somebody like Colbert has the audacity to stand up there and say that they compare them to Nazis and fascists. By the way, which if you ever look up Nazi, everybody should take their time to do that. And I think it's National German Socialist Workers' Party. I could be mixing up the way the acronym translates in German, but it's got the word socialist in it. And of course, all these idiots want socialism in this country. They don't realize that fascism is just socialism in a different guise. It's basically tantamount to communism, and all socialism leads to communism. So that's what this guy states on there. Mind you, Colbert, and I have another friend, and I will not say anything about his name, but he does personal protection for Jimmy Kimmel and all this, and it's all cops. It's all retired cops, just like me, that have their ability to carry their concealed weapons permit, and they give protection to these guys. They want protection. They're fine. They're very important people as they think of it. They're VIPs, right? They deserve the protection that you as the average person do not. And of course, ICE cannot afford the security these guys do, because of course, when we're off duty and we're doing security, a lot of these guys are $50 to $75 an hour at a minimum. So guess what? You have professionals with the ability to carry guns, know how to use them, or cops actually can recognize threats before the actualization of a dangerous situation and get you out of there or protect you. Yeah, they can pay for that. You as the average person, you don't need that. And the ICE worker, he should have to pay for personal security just to sleep in his home, because God forbid that he went out and ridded the world of effing pedophiles and rapists and child traffickers, horrible people.
Slow clap for Stephen Colbert. I mean, is anyone still surprised that his show has been cancelled? His show will be finishing up
Not at
in
all.
May. And then there's Jimmy Kimmel, the guy who lied about Charlie Kirk's murder, cried about it only because he was suspended for a week. Well, he's now brought out the tears on stage once again.
If our leaders are intentionally creating and encouraging violence and fear, then I hope you will also agree we need new leaders, because these are not leaders.
Let's pause right there on that one. How hypocritical is it of this moron, Jimmy Kimmel, who basically is walking excrement? He comes on there and he states that if they're preaching violence, we need new leaders. That is exactly what Tim Walz did, along with the mayor of Minneapolis, who the mayor even stood out there and said, F ICE. We don't want you here. We want you out of here. When you get sworn in to represent the people, you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of your state and the U.S. What do you think a Constitution is? It's not only a set of rights, but it's a set of not only limiting government, but of laws. You're swearing an oath to uphold those laws. You don't go out there and openly defile and basically just diminish. And what's the best way to put this one would be to just disparage and talk poorly about everybody out there in the law enforcement community. Well, or maybe not everybody, but ICE. This guy's doing this. And it's rather paradoxical that here it is, Kimmel sitting up there saying, we need to elect new leaders. The only leaders that ever advocate violence or dissension or taking to the streets or ignoring laws or starting to GoFundMe to get people who've been taken to jail who are rioting to get right back out and do the same thing. Or, of course, the Democrats want to eliminate bail. Did we ever think of the fact that maybe that's sometimes what even stops the problems on the street? Repercussions, people. A guy gets arrested, he goes to jail, it's an unpleasant experience, then he has to post bail, he doesn't have the money, he may sit in there, or his parents, of course, have to come up with the money to help him get out of jail, leverage the house, mortgage, take out a second on the home, pull equity from their home, whatever they have to do. So this idiot has a calm down phase from his emotional diarrhea of going out there and thinking that ICE is somehow the Gestapo or fascist. Those guys on the Nazi Party killed indiscriminately. That is a far comparison to police officers out there doing their job to keep your city safe. How delusional and deranged do these talk show hosts have to be? No wonder they're being canceled, because they're stupid assholes. That is literally the definition of one IQ point above cabbage. Not to mention the elitist attitude of, you have private security armed with guns that know how to use them. But of course, the ICE is out there as the Gestapo. I don't even understand what's wrong with these people. It's insanity to me. Crying bitch.
And to the people of Minneapolis, to the Preddy family and the Good family, and these people who were looking out for their neighbors, we want you to know that we are with
You realize it right there, both of his labias quivered.
you, and you are not alone.
So, and they are not my neighbors. If you're here illegally, you're not my neighbor. You are illegal. It's simple as that. That's like saying people in prison are my neighbors. No, they're incarcerated. They're not my neighbors. They don't exercise the freedoms of a normal neighbor. They are not the people that I socialize with on the front lawn while we're mowing our front lawn on a Sunday. No, they're not neighbors. They're here illegally. Now, if you're here legally from any country, I don't care where it's from, and you have a visa, you have a green card, and you have a right to work, I say welcome. You're my neighbor at that point.
And I'll tell you another thing. We also want to see those Epstein files already.
Didn't want to see the Epstein files for what, 4 years while Dementia Boy and his cabinet was in there? Nobody cared about it then, but it's only because Trump's in office now. I have no doubts that that guy, Kimmel, allegedly might be a pedophile himself. There's something weird about that guy. Wouldn't doubt Colbert either. It's always ironic, by the way, let me point out this, totally unrelated. You ever notice the people that are for reducing the stringency of laws and penalties that apply to people who harm children, pedophilia? Notice that it's all Democrats that vote against stricter laws that are more harsh, give longer penalties for those people. Why? Because as they groom and they commit all those acts on their own, they want to make sure that, God forbid, when they get caught one day, they don't have to face life in prison. They're hoping to just get some sort of probation because, hell, they only did something wrong to a little kid and screwed him up for life. But they can walk away from it in a couple years, hopefully.
He's such a fake actor. I mean, there were no tears for Charlie Kirk, Irina Zavrutska, or Laken Riley, the 22-year-old nursing student who was killed by an illegal immigrant. Look, I think what happened in Minnesota is absolutely tragic, I do. But obstructing law enforcement operations while armed with a gun, it's not a great idea. And if people keep hearing that ICE officers...
So I'm going to comment on that real quick. Obviously, with you guys knowing that I'm a retired police officer, and then for you, those of you that this might be your first video, I spent 18 years as a cop in California. I was a training officer. I'm going to tell you right now, there's policy for all police officers that they are not to carry their gun when they go anywhere and have cocktails or drinks. Why? Because simple logic dictates that the likelihood of you being in danger and having to use your gun is probably a far less percentage than an officer getting in an altercation or something going wrong, and while under the influence of that alcohol may make a stupid decision that could upend his life, ruin his career, put him in jail, and of course, if he's a father of children, leave his children without a father. That is a no good scenario. And basically it comes down to this. I'm a huge Second Amendment guy. If you have a right to carry, really the Second Amendment gives you the right to carry as long as you're not mentally deranged. But this pretty guy, he apparently had his own CCW, fine. He was a nurse, another RN, another deranged RN like the retard before. But this guy decides to go out to what you would call a protest. Not a protest, it's a riot. There was video of him previously before where he spit on an ICE car. He tried to kick out a light. Both of those are vandalism. One is to destroy or damage. The other one is to deface. They're both crimes. The guy should have been arrested. It would have also included impeding or obstructing an officer. It would have been obstruction of justice. He should have been charged with multiple things. From what I heard, I didn't see the video, but he got away with it. You don't go to another ICE outing and bring your gun and then advocate somehow that you were there with your gun just because you have a CCW to protect yourself. From what? ICE agents? This guy Pretty was a nurse. He was a legal citizen in the United States. He had zero to fear at that protest, as you would call it. The only thing he could ever fear is that some other moron, as stupid as the asshole that shot Charlie Kirk, would show up there and maybe want to kill somebody else, and he might want to use his gun to defend himself. And I guarantee you civil rights attorneys are going to get a hold of this. They're going to try and say, oh, he went there under the chance that some crazy guy could go off and want to shoot him or another protester, or he would have even protected ICE. He's the kind of he was a nurse. He cared for people. Trust me, that civil suit is coming down the line, and some sharp attorney is going to try and create that angle as to that's why he brought his gun there. However, here's where I'm going to throw a hole in that. If you went to what you would call a protest, which it's not, they went to cause disruption and obstruction of justice. They went to assault ICE. You can see that clearly because of the fact that Pretty was in the middle of something. I didn't get to see the before video, but it led to a highly volatile situation. From what I heard, the ICE agents were trapped in there or had been cut off from a caravan that they were with. And then, of course, the ICE officer has to deploy pepper spray on Pretty. Now, if an officer is needing to use force, there's obviously a reasonable fear for his safety. And you could already see that moron Pretty getting in his face, and I think was shoving him before that. You already have assault right there. The guy should have been arrested. But you do not bring a gun there and then act the way he was and not expect things to go wrong. I want you to think about this, folks. If you go somewhere with your gun, your only purpose is hopefully to protect yourself. That's why you carry your CCW. When you go somewhere to actively obstruct law enforcement and then you claim there was a danger to yourself, when you're there to agitate and obstruct law enforcement, that's a really, really strange quality of events you're trying to justify there for carrying your CCW, which, by the way, all of his actions there would have stripped him of his right to carry his CCW to begin with. The state would have taken it away from them after the officers decided to take his weapon and submit that he has no need to carry it anymore. Anyway.
There's Nazis from Democrats, from the mainstream media. You're just going to be seeing more people wanting to take to the streets and wanting to get in the way of ICE operations. Just finally, on the media's coverage of all of this, Joe Rogan has blasted MS Now, formerly known as MSNBC, for apparently editing the photograph of Alex Pretty to make him look more attractive in their media coverage.
Not a shock.
Did you see what MSNBC did to his image?
Yeah.
where they gussied
Basically
it up.
did the opposite of what CNN did to me. You know, CNN during the COVID times turned me green, and they made me ugly and look like I was dying, and they made him handsome.
Yeah.
So people would be more sympathetic to him getting shot, which is kind of wild. Like, are ugly people less valuable to MSNBC?
Less
Yes,
marketable.
they are.
That is crazy to me. Like, look at the difference.
Yeah.
Look at the difference. They shortened up his face. They gave him a little bit of a tan. They widened his face a little bit, it seems like.
Let's pause right there. And of course, you notice, by the way, people, you remember, you can't do any fat shaming. You know, you can't tell somebody they're fat. I walk into my doctor, he tells me he needs to lose some weight. I realize full well that he's telling me that for my health purposes. He's not there to be horrible to me or mean to me or cause some sort of trigger point like I have some fragile emotions. No, he's telling me factual things that are related to health standards. That's why the man went to school, or the lady went to school for 8 years to become a doctor. In actuality, a lot of my doctors are ladies, so I prefer them sometimes. That's a whole other story as to why, but usually because women nurture, men become doctors. A lot of times I feel like because of ego, women get into it because they actually care. That's just my feeling. So I generally prefer female doctors. Of course, law enforcement should only be men, and that's going to, of course, trigger a lot of ladies, but sorry to say, I've seen too much. I worked in a high crime area, very high crime. In fact, one of the highest crime rate cities in the United States for several years, and we were the highest per capita crime rate in the U.S. I believe the state of California for a couple of years. So I saw quite a bit, and every time we had to get physical, the ladies are on the outside of the circle, and the men are in there, the ones having to take the guy and get hurt. But you know, that's going to trigger a lot of women. I don't really care. That's just the truth of the matter, and I've seen it over and over. That is notwithstanding, there aren't some incompetent, very short wussy cop guys that I've seen in my life too that shouldn't be in there either. But anyway, that's the point behind all this. There's not much more on that. Just Joe showing the alteration of this guy. It's ridiculous. Of course, can't fat shame somebody. The Democrats are always advocating for looks shouldn't matter. I don't even know what it was with some transvestite dude in that most recent Wizard of Oz one. That I think was a black female that looked like a man. It was about one of the most hideous things. Again, I wouldn't even mate my dog with that. It was horrific. I don't know how that girl could ever have children without it happening through a lab, because I can't imagine any guy that would ever be drunk enough to take that. But that's a whole story for another day. But of course, when you're looking at Pretty here, we need to make sure that he's pretty. And they want to make him look more approachable, more boy next door. If you want to think back on that, look back to the days when that one black kid was, I think, killed after he was being followed by a guy who was part of a neighborhood watch. I don't even remember his name. You can look that up. And Obama said, this is the kid that would look just like my son if I would have had one. And of course, they're showing him when he's 12, not when he was like 17 and 18 and a thug and tattooed all up and everything. That's what the media does. They wanted to make it look good because it was a Hispanic man that shot a black guy, and they wanted to make it look completely racial. That's our media. They lie. There's no integrity to it. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Everybody be well until then, and don't go out protesting ICE. That's just a recipe for disaster. You're not doing anything. Go through your congressman, go through the legislature. If you want to change laws, that's the way to properly do it. Walking out on the street and standing there like the F-tard that you are does not do anything except the recipe for going to jail or getting hurt. You look at the last moron that tried to pick up the flashbang and got her hand blown off. Good job. Again, thinning the herd. That's Darwinism at its best. Take care, all.